And this is a game that was released 20 years ago, but this one's going to be giving you a revised and improved edition of this game. All the artwork and components are improved in this game, and what's really nice about this game is that it uses magnets in order to tie gear to your various units. This is a head-to-head game where players are going to be relying more on their strategy rather than their luck as you play either 1v1 or 2v2, racing to be the first team to gain 5 points. There's a few different ways that you can gain victory points in this game, but the main ways are by either defeating your opponent's units or by getting your units to their side of the board. As you move your units, you can also pick up different types of gear that are going to be magnetically attached to the bottom of your miniature, and you can see how it works in this video here, but I can also show you in person because they were nice enough to send me a copy of the game. The way the game's set up is that you're going to have a bunch of boards in the center, and then each team is going to be starting on either side of those boards. I'm only showing 4 here, but you're actually going to be playing with 8, having a 2x4 layout. I just have the 4 out here because I have limited space on my table, and this is enough to at least give you an idea how the game plays. Like I said, this is a game that has very little luck, and a big part of that is that each team is going to have access to the same types of units and the same type of gear that they're going to be putting out on various locations out on the board. Each team's going to have 8 different units, and the cards here are only used to keep track of the unit's health and movement, as well as any special abilities. The wizard can move really quickly and also hover over obstacles. The wall walker can walk through walls. The goblin is worth 2 victory points if you're able to get them to the other side of the board. The warrior can actually break through closed doors. The cleric can heal other units. The mechanorc can rotate boards more easily, which I'll come back to in a second here. The troll has a regeneration effect. And then the thief is able to move freely over traps. But each player is going to have a bunch of these different tokens that have each of the units and different types of gear offered in the game. And these are also going to have question marks on the back of them because at the start of the game, players are going to be setting up the board by taking turns putting these out on the various locations. You're always going to be putting 4 of your units in the starting position on your side, but then your remaining tokens you can put out on any of the tiles, keeping in mind that there is a limit to how many tokens can go on a single tile. So let's say that the blue team put 4 of their units out in their starting positions, and then the red team did the same. Now they would just take turns putting different tokens on the different spaces that they want those tokens to be. But you do want to try and remember what you're putting where because you're not going to be allowed to look at these again after you've put them out. And I just want to reiterate here that if I did use all the tiles, I would have put all the tokens out, so every piece of gear and every unit does get used in every game. But once all of that's done, players can go ahead and reveal the different units that they placed at their starting positions, and then you're just going to be taking the associated miniature and then replacing the token with that miniature. I'll go ahead and do that now. Now that the game's set up, players are just going to be taking turns performing their actions. You're going to be choosing a starting player, and then players each have these action cards that they're going to be simultaneously choosing and revealing in order to determine how many actions they have available for this particular round. Let's say that the red player revealed a 2 and the blue player revealed a 4. Those cards are going to be used this round, and then they're going to be discarded until you've used all of your action cards, and it's only at that point that you're able to pick all of your action cards back up and to be able to use them in a future round. Each action point can allow you to do one of 6 different things. You can either reveal a room, rotate a room, move one of your characters the number of movement points that they have, initiate combat with a opponent player adjacent to you, or use a character's special ability, or use an object that you might have equipped. Since the blue player has 4 action points, they're going to be using their first action point to flip a room, and you're able to do this anytime that one of your units is in a space adjacent to that room. So I have 2 units adjacent to this room, so I'll just go ahead and flip this. And you may notice that this tile did have 2 tokens on it, and there are 2 different types of gear. There's armor and a rope. And what's really cool about this is that anytime a room is flipped, all the blue tokens are going to be placed on one of the spaces by the red player, and then all the red tokens are going to be placed on any of the spaces by the blue player. Since the red player does not want the blue player to get these pieces of gear easily, they're going to be putting them in faraway spaces that aren't so easy to get to. For any of these gates, you're going to be putting a gate token on top of it to indicate that that location is currently blocked. But as I mentioned, the warrior is able to break through those with an action point, but unfortunately for me, I don't have my warrior in play yet. There's also these locations with traps on them that only some of your units will have abilities to either move through or over on their own, but for your units that don't have any ability like that, you do have a few of these jump cards that are one-time use, but you can use them to get over those traps a little bit easier. Otherwise, you're going to have to find another way to get around it, or possibly just eat the damage. And a really useful way to do that is to rotate the room in order to make new paths accessible to you. And that's what this icon is here, and every tile does have an icon that allows you to rotate the room, and it's going to indicate in which direction that room will rotate when you use that. But in order to use it, you do have to move one of your units on top of it, and then spend an action point for each rotation that you want to make. But I do still have 3 action points I can spend, and I'm going to use my next action point to move my Mechanorc, who has a movement of 3, and also has an ability that allows me to rotate the room that he's in for 1 action point. So I'm going to use an action point to move my Mechanorc, his 3 movement points, all the way over here. And I'm going to use my next action point to rotate this room any direction that I want, and I want to rotate it like this. And then I'll use my last action point to move my wizard onto this piece of gear, which is the rope, which isn't super useful for the wizard because the wizard can already hover over traps and the rope allows you to move through traps without harm. But I can drop it at any time or trade it with an adjacent unit, so I think it is worth picking up. Now the red player is going to use their 2 action points, and then they're going to flip this tile over here. And then, just like before, since these are red tokens, it's going to be up to the blue player to decide where they go, and they're going to put them wherever they think is the most difficult for the red player to get to them. But one of these tokens is actually one of the red player's units, so whenever this comes up, you're actually going to be swapping it out for the associated miniature. But the same thing happens here. The blue player gets to decide where they go, so the blue player might put this token somewhere over here, and then put this unit somewhere over here. And that's it for the first round. This game can play very quickly, but both of these cards are then going to be discarded. And then the next round is going to start with each player simultaneously choosing an action point card to reveal. Then it's going to be the red player who gets to go first. I've just fast forwarded the game here to show you how combat works, and whenever you have 2 units that are adjacent to each other, the active player can spend an action point in order to attack the adjacent unit. The Mechanorc has a base strength of 2, while the Wallwalker only has a base strength of 1, but the Wallwalker does have a sword attached to them, which does give them an extra point of strength, but unfortunately for them, this is only when they are initiating the attack, and in this example, I'm going to have the blue character initiate the attack. Each player has the same selection of combat cards at the start of the game, and then you're going to be simultaneously choosing one and then revealing it to add to your unit's strength. I'm just going to randomly draw one from each, and we'll see how it plays out. So the blue player played a +3, and then the red player played a +2. Since this one already had a strength of 2 and this one had a strength of 1, the blue player would win and would be able to take this unit as a victory point. If the game continued and this Mechanorc was able to make it all the way to the red unit starting position, that would also be another way to gain a victory point. But the game just continues like this until one of the teams is able to amass 5 victory points, and then that team is the winner. Of course, there's going to be a bunch of new surprises with the campaign as well, including a brand new expansion, so if you are interested in this one, if it looks like fun to you, definitely check it out, and I'll have it linked in the description down below.